Oops. Right, sorry, I have to apologise. The typing screen is going to be wrong on this one, and it is in fact me giving SM and the law. Right, just a quick show of hands, if you don't mind. If you have any understanding or training in the area of the law, please put your hand up. Excellent. Okay, couple, good. Okay. The law, don't you just love it? It is the largest consensual, non-consensual relationship that you will ever be in. Okay? Simple as that. And it's very important for people to understand the law in that particular context, because while we do have the ability to change the law, it takes more of us than it probably we would want it to. Because it's a thing where they have to be proposed as a law to Parliament, then gets debated, gets voted upon, then it gets reviewed by the House of Lords, then it gets signed off by Her Majesty, and then it becomes an actual act. Okay? It's a law at that particular stage. And one of the things I want to make very, very clear on this is that the law effectively is the guidebook. It says what you can and can't do and what the consequences of those actions are. Now, there are thousands of laws in this country, but the key ones that relate to SM are there on the board. Okay? The first one is the Offences Against the Persons Act of 1861. Obviously, that's a massively up-to-date piece of legislation. If you think about the world that we lived in 1861, it was very, very different. And one of the reasons why the law is so strict and tight on this, and particularly the definition, you can't consent to your own assault, you can't consent to anything that is greater than trifling and transient, was that in 1861, if someone scratched your skin, there was a reasonable chance you might actually die from it. Because we didn't have antibiotics, we didn't have modern medicine, and we weren't particularly set up on it. We weren't particularly set up to deal with the things that we now take tablet for. So the world was incredibly different. Now, I'd like to think that people would say it's probably time to bring that law up to date. And guess what? In 2018, they said, yes, we're going to review the Offences Against the Persons Act of 1861. And the Home Office did a consultation, and on page 19 it actually says the law is not fair to people who are into kink. They're being persecuted by the law and we need to bring it up to date. The problem is politics. And I'm not going to say you've got to vote Green or Lib Dem or Labour or Conservative. And quite frankly, they're all as bad as each other. Because it should be that the law is required and brought onto the books because it is needed by society. A lot of the laws aren't really needed by the wider society, particularly over the last 15 years, they seem to be benefiting corporations over individuals, etc. And a number of the things that have gone through public consultations, I'll talk about one a bit later. 80% of the people who wrote in said, we don't want this law, we're not interested, we're happy with what we've currently got on the books. And the government ignored it, and actually went on Sky TV and said, 80% of people said they want this new law. And we sat there on Sky TV and went, no, 80% said we didn't. Don't misrepresent. So they will twist it at every opportunity. Okay? The system is a lot broken, not just a little bit, but this workshop isn't about how we fix that, it's how we navigate and work around this. Now, the Serious Crimes Act of 2015, Section 76, is about controlling and coercive behaviour. Okay? It is against the law to act in a way that is intimidating or controlling to a member of your family or someone you're in an intimate relationship with. Now, the bad news here is we'd like to think, well, actually, if you're in that kind of DS dynamic where things aren't equal, you might be both controlling and coercive of the person. So I'm quite worried about that. Doubly worried because I've seen some of the more virtuous members of our community attempt to claim it. Oh, your Dom was an abuser, they were controlling and coercive. Yeah, but that's the dynamic I'm looking for. It can be difficult, and again, with a lot of these laws, you can find yourself on the wrong side of it without realizing it. Okay? You have a relationship breakup, and this is where I've seen this one come in several times. People trying to build cases around it. Okay? So part of that is be aware of it, be aware of the implications, and do what you can to have the healthiest possible relationships. Okay? Because if people are sensible and say, hey, you know what, we're going to have a good time, it might not be a long time, then at least you establish that understanding. And it's not as if you play once or twice and you go, yeah, you know what, it's not working for us. But if you were coming into it thinking, oh my God, we're going to play once or twice and he's going to collar me, and I'm going to be his permanent 24/7 living slave, and that's not what they want to, then you might be left with the impression that I've done something very wrong and misled you, and one of your friends might go, that Master Cosmic is terribly controlling and intimidating. You should get him done under the 76. Okay? It does happen. So be sensible, be careful. There's not a lot you can always do to avoid it, other than try and be the most decent human you can.
Are you aware of anyone that's actually being prosecuted at the moment? Is this
Yes.
like something that would
It's relatively new. I am aware of people who have tried to put cases in front of the CPS in the kink context, and the CPS have chucked it out. Okay? Because again, it has to be in the public's best interest. Okay? You can't just say, well, a slightly controversial one at the moment might be Partygate. They're saying we're not going to prosecute because it might not be in the public's best interest. And we're all going, fucking well it is. Sue the bastards. Give them fines. Make them pay because they didn't do what we did. Okay? So it's one of those. It has to meet the requirements. The CPS have to say this is in the public's best interest because it costs an awful lot of money to go to court.
Judges are irritable.
Yeah, they don't like their time being wasted.
No.
Yeah, and equally, by the time you actually build a case around some of this stuff, it can be hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money that's spent building the case. And I'll touch upon one particular case which is so close to my own heart that they spent about £150,000 getting it wrong. But there we go. I'll come on to that one as I said. The Sexual Offences Act of 2003, Section 57, trafficking into the UK for sexual exploitation. This was replaced in 2015 by the Modern Slavery Act. Now, the interesting thing between the two, the Modern Slavery Act is all about enforced slavery and enforced servitude. And that means it doesn't apply to kinksters. And in this particular case, we can thank that one for some of the people who were drafting it that are a little bit kinky themselves. So they made sure we were as representative as possible. But I'm just going to jump back onto 2003 because one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, and not many people will be fully aware of this one, but in 2018, I got woken very early on a Thursday morning by 14 police officers with a search warrant, trafficking into the UK for the purposes of sexual exploitation. So, what had happened in that particular situation is a friend of mine who was in a long-term relationship, 15, 16 years with someone else, that relationship broke down. She returned to the US from where she was from, And I suspect a combination between having to explain where her missing passport was and the fact that she might not have had the money to return to America, she sold them on this great story of her human trafficking. Unfortunately, they didn't bother to check Google for the details, and they knocked on my door. And it took 3.5 months for them to decide that it was a complete crock of shit, despite the fact that literally on the morning I'm going, you've made this claim here, the date is wrong, and Google could have told you that. If no one bothered to verify and check any of these details whatsoever. But as I was informed and reminded multiple times on the day, this is a serious matter, and it has to be looked into seriously. It does. It's a massively serious matter. And one day I actually go out and stop harassing us and raid a few nail bars, or agricultural centres, or factories, or cockle picking. You know what? They're aware the problem actually exists, but unfortunately there's the perception, oh my God, they're talking about slaves. It must be the slaves I'm thinking of, and not the 50 Shades of Grey type ones. But there you go. I will honestly say I've done some wild things in my time, but that was probably the one event of the last couple of years that shaped me more than anything. Okay? Because I had this great faith in the police up until this point in time. I'd worked with them on a number of occasions, which again is a reason why they shouldn't come full steam knocking on my door. Because quite frankly, if you've helped put bad people away, it's probably unlikely that you're going to be a bad person yourself. So there we go. So that one kind of wraps that one up a little bit. We have attempted to record the story of that particular incident on 3 occasions now, and every single time the equipment fails. Okay? I will sit at home and record it in the privacy of my own home on a video camera at some stage so it can be shared, but every time we try and record it publicly, it's just static and white noise interference. I don't know how the hell they're doing it, but somehow they are managing it, and the only way is for me to get out with a camera and record it separately. So, that kind of wraps up those two. The other one, which is kind of important because it's the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act of 2008. This was actually the first law that I stood up and went, no, not on my watch, thank you. We need to fight this one. And this is about the possession of extreme pornography. It's not about the creation, it's about you having it in your possession. Now, this piece of legislation is so badly written that if someone was to send you, for example, a picture of someone's arse that would be pained and there's blood all over the place, that picture can get you in trouble. Even if you delete it off your system, if there is a little thumbnail GIF of it and they are in the mood, they will go for you. There was a case, must have been about 5 years ago in London, a high-profile individual. They went after him for some fisting pictures and sounding pictures. Okay? On the scheme of things, come on in and sit down, Phil. In the grand scheme of things, not the most extreme act at all, but clearly they were determined to get this person. He happened to be quite senior in local government, and he'd been very vocal against the Metropolitan Police. And as a result, it was clearly a mission, and I think it did 2 weeks in court before it eventually got thrown out. And it's a crazy one. One of the other classics down on this one, I'll come to your question in a second, but I want to get this one off my chest because it is just the best. Has anyone heard of the Tony the Tiger case? Okay. So, someone ends up in court because they're caught in possession of this video that they were being prosecuted for bestiality, and the case got thrown out pretty much, I think it was in the first hour or two, when the defence turned around and said, "Did you not listen to the sound?" And the prosecution went, "What? This sound?" And because this material was considered to be so deeply offensive, it had been installed on one computer, a laptop, and they hadn't bothered to check if the sound card was working. So when they played it in court with the sound, the guy dressed in the furry Tony the Tiger suit was going, "Rah! I want you in my bowl, you're great!" Of course, everyone in the court was pissed himself laughing. But at that particular stage, they pulled someone in, they'd arrested them, they'd obviously taken them to court, they'd basically done the best part of destroying this person's life because they hadn't bothered to check that their sound card was working. Okay? So, the law, it should be great and very black and white and very simple. Unfortunately, the people who go out to enforce it aren't necessarily the brightest of individuals. Okay? Now, why is it important to us as Kingsters? Pretty much in the same way as everything. Ignorance of the law is absolutely no defence of the law. Okay? You can't say, "I wasn't aware of the 1861 offences against the Persons Act and how it would apply to me." Sorry. You're a citizen of this country, you live here, you're supposed to know the law. Okay? I don't know anyone who would think to go that far back to see what applies, but yeah, you do need to. Okay? And equally, being aware of this and its implications on us as individuals, you can then properly have informed consent. Okay? If you want to cane someone, you are probably going to leave a mark that is greater than 5 feet. Is that person you are about to play with someone you can trust to engage in this activity with? Okay? Because we all know stories of people who went, "Oh my God, you want to be caned? Please, or book a hotel room, I'll see you on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Thursday afternoon comes round, oh my God, I'm looking forward to this, it's going to be great. Get to the appropriate level of dressed or undressed, bend over the bench, chair, whatever it is, take your cane straights, and the bloke woke up in the hotel on his own next morning. Didn't think anything of it because, wow, great session, we enjoyed it, we had great fun. And a couple of hours later, tap on the shoulder. "Excuse me, sir, I need to have a chat with you. You assaulted someone last night and caned you." Now, woke up in the morning, arse black and blue, lot of pain. I didn't want that. I went to the police for it. And at that particular stage, not a lot that the person can do. Now, could you have pre-mortem that and worked out, is this likely to happen? Possibly, possibly not. We're never going to know. But if you don't look at it and think, hang on a minute, I'm about to do something that is going to be in a position where I could be on the wrong side of the law, am I really 150% comfortable and confident that this is going to end well? Okay? Because if it's not, I would strongly advise you to take a couple of steps back and do something a little bit lighter. Okay? As Poppy said earlier, you can always add to something, but it'll be difficult to take it back. Okay? So if it's someone that you're playing with for the first time, don't go in really heavy. Build it up, grow that relationship, build that trust together. Okay? Because if you do end up in a situation where you get that tap on the shoulder, it is going to knock your confidence. Okay? It's one of those. It's also going to have a huge impact on your life because when it happened to me, oh God, did they have a field day. No smoke without fire. They got a search warrant, must have done something wrong. And literally everyone had a good pie-in session. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to give the details that would have made it very clear to everyone else that I was absolutely fucking fixed up on this one. Couldn't even show the policeman the pictures that they were telling me they were investigating. You've taken pictures of this person and sold them on the internet. Anyone's gone through the pictures on my FetLife profile, about 400 or 500 down, you'll find pictures of someone in a wheelchair being suspended outdoors. Big grin from ear to ear. Funny how 7 years later, she was so pissed off with me and her ex-partner that she shocked us into immigration. So I can sit there going, wow, I've exploited this person by hanging them up in a wheelchair and fundraising to buy them another wheelchair because they couldn't get one on the NHS. So it's one of those. Sorry.
I remember seeing a protest a few years ago. It was like putting the flames. Exit protest outside.
Yes.
Was that to do with the extreme porn?
That was the extreme porn bill.
Because they would have been banned under
Yep.
the new law bill.
Yep.
I was like, what?
Yeah. So the lady with the tweed jacket and the joggers, really good friend of mine, Mistress absolute complete star. Because for them, it was just this, oh, hang on. And the extreme form, the phrase is anything that could result in a permanent or disfiguring injury to anyone's breast, anus, or genitalia. And of course, on that one, face hitting, smothering, well, that's suffocation, isn't it? So, yeah, and it was like, that's going to be banned. And I think there was a porn review a couple of years later as well that technically banned squirting on video in the UK. Because as far as the law is concerned, yeah, so water sports are illegal, but medically they don't acknowledge female ejaculation as different to urine. So in their heads, it's one and the same thing. I'm sitting there going, I put my fingers in the glass of one, and it has a very sticky, lubricated consistency. I put my fingers in the other, and I know it's piss, because I've pissed on my hand before. Sorry, everyone. It's that simple. They are two different materials. Quite how they get to where they are, the world is still debating. But they are two separate materials. But as far as the law is concerned, it's fluid coming out someone there.
Yeah, and you they were like, you can't tell the difference if they're fake it, just makes me
Well, I can tell the difference. Because again, I've seen people fake it, it generally comes out yellow when they're faking it.
I was about to say, one's yellow. We've been in a similar situation. We got arrested by the National Crime Agency for a serious crime act and also in entrapment imprisonment of a guy with little free will. And even though it was disproved, they went trolling through all our kind of material. They devastated us, our confidence level.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't get to court and the CPS said it's not in the best interest of both parties and in the public.
Yeah.
Basically, they trolled us and they did everything they could to stop the claim.
Yeah.
And it's not so much kind of the courts and the law, but once they've locked onto you, you're always going to be on their watch list. It doesn't matter if you haven't done anything wrong or anything like that.
Yeah.
They will lock onto you and they will come after you.
Yeah, and it certainly feels that way.
Yeah.
And in my case, they made enough mistakes that I'm going off. Well, I went after them under the IOPC, Independent Office of Police Complaints, and lo and behold, they went, oh, no, we've thoroughly investigated and they didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, well, hang on a minute. Where is the SIM card from my mobile phone you got lost in your custody? If you did nothing wrong, what is the general data protection regulations in the UK got to say about this? And now they're backpedaling very quickly because I've gone from the IOPC to the Mayor's Office of Policing and Crime. Because unfortunately, in my case, I'm on the spectrum, and in this particular situation, I'm like a dog with a bone. Because, you know what, in my case, I've already had the conversation. I've said, Dad, sorry, they may turn up on the doorstep tomorrow because your address is associated with the company, and I've just been nicked today for human trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation. His response, fucking idiot, if you will hang out with these people, rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, actually, Dad, you know what? I'm going to put this on your shoulders today. You fucking well won't. Yes, I will. Because when I was growing up, you told me if someone is down on their luck and you can help them, do it. Just do it. I said, now in this particular case, these people were down on their luck. One of them needed an all-terrain wheelchair, couldn't get it on the NHS, so we raised the money for him. And he was just like, wow. I said, so I followed your advice. I've been the best human being that I can throughout my life, even though you might not agree with what I do in my private life. I still have those moral standards and ethics. So yeah, and it's deeply unpleasant. One of the things I always say in this workshop as well is if you know anyone who gets raided, the first thing they're going to take is their phones, their IT equipment. Contact us. We have spare smartphones and spare laptops that we will send out to you. Okay? Now, when we get them back, we just scrub the hard drives, reformat, and start again. We're not interested in what you have done to the laptop. Okay? What we're interested in is we think that is one of the most abusive things that people can do to isolate people from their support network, particularly at a point where there is a phenomenal level of stress in the world. Okay? So we went, no, give us your laptops, give us your smartphones, let us give them out to people in office code. It happens on a regular enough basis. It's not just one or two smartphones and one or two laptops.
And also as well, they actually threatened to take our key stuff away to DNS listed.
Oh, did you?
And stuff, and like they wanted to know everything about images. You know, they were going to do even what we call as SIC search, L9 systems and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's even kind of illegal because you're not MI5, so you can plug it off. You know, and they were willing to actually trash people. I've seen that before as well.
Some of the police authorities around the corner, around the country, have a big stiffy threat and absolutely huge one. So there are counties that I will not hold events in because I know the police are
Don't do it.
Yeah. And others where they're massively open and accepting to it. In fact, one outdoor event the other year, I had to politely advise the two police officers who turned up at an anonymous tip-off to turn their body cams off because there was a fair chance that a senior member of the judiciary was already in the event and not in uniform. And they kind of went, oh yeah, thank you, because that really would have been embarrassing for us. Now, that's me thinking about them and saying, I don't want your career to be cut short by you making this mistake, but one of your kids is already inside already.
It's just a forgot. Now, specifically, they're talking about also the next man, people that have not said now about it.
Yeah,
That's the whole bit.
and also the thing is that because I used to work actually in law enforcement down in London, you know, they brought in big guns because they knew that they couldn't do me with the local police force.
Yep.
So they brought the NCA in, and I was like, oh good, yes, have fun. And the actual woman which interviewed me went, it's okay, you know, we're all on this BDSM thing, you know, we got this slap and tackle. And I was thinking, oh, you're playing this game where you're going to get me entrapped because I'm going to agree to all this sort of stuff. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and they're very clever if they want to do it that way.
Yeah. And my interview at Brixton Police Station was 3.5 hours. Okay. Really intense because they did not let up for 3.5 hours. And this is normally you would go, here's the charges, this is what you read a statement that you and your lawyer wrote, and then you do a no comment interview, which would have probably lasted all of 30 minutes at the most. 3.5 hours. Because actually, in this particular case, I had nothing to hide. So actually, putting it all out on the table and go, well, this person who's accused me, I always thought that they had a great relationship with their partner. They were into this PDS. This has been going on for years and years and years. To the best of my knowledge, as in prior to you knocking on my door and letting me know that this is what this is about, I seriously believe that they still live together. I had no idea that they'd separated and one of them was back in the US. Now I'd have thought actually I would know a little bit about that if there was a problem and it was all this bad. So this is all news to me, I'm a little bit shocked. But God, do they love asking stupid questions. And some of them, I think, will possibly get them in trouble in the long run, because they were the wrong side of the morals and ethics of asking such questions. But they clearly did not understand our culture and science. So with the IOPC, I've offered politely to identify some people who might be able to kind of get their knowledge up. And I was even sensible enough and said, look, I'm a keen educator, but in this particular case, I'm going to recuse myself because it's not appropriate. But no, they've decided we do actually understand it and we don't need that offer. And I'm sitting there going, well guys, I'll leave that up to the judicial review to make that decision. Because after I've done the MOPAC next, if I don't get the response I'm looking for, I will push for a judicial review. At that stage, I'm going to have to ask you all to put your hand in your pocket and give us a couple of quid towards it, because it's going to be about 16 grand for that one. But I'm quite happy to go up and stand in the Crown Court in London and go, excuse me, what the shit is this bollocks about? Seriously. What?
They're not going to Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court for a judicial review, yeah, sorry. Because I want to take this as far as we physically can, because the more, at this particular stage, the more crap and more inconvenient we make this for them, the less likely they are to come after another one. Or they're more likely to do their due diligence and check first, which is all I want, because had they bothered to look on the police national database, they would have seen the collaborations and systems I've given them before. The US immigration database includes the reference to the fact that I'm a share of the Spanish Trust and therefore a known and identifiable kink activist. So quite what they did knocking on my door is still a mystery, because most of what they should have found out from Google, their own databases, would have made them realise that this doesn't quite actually add up. And then there were a lot of inconsistencies to do with dates and stuff like that as well. So,
but I'm just thinking as well that sometimes like police or other agencies have this thing that they want one of them skin sculpts so they can just play it as their own. So they can go, oh, actually, we actually did this eventually, we've got one now, so that can open the floodgates.
yeah. Or just to prove that it's still an important, it's an issue, they have to find that test case and throw around.
I'm curious how a lot of this works with like images and ideas because like a lot of stuff you're saying deals with the fact that like, oh, we have images, oh, we have videos, etc. And
Yep.
things like,
What do those images look like?
yeah, what do those images look like and what's legal? Because like,
Okay.
like you were saying, some points illegal in this country.
Absolutely. So what we did was we printed out 200 images. Some of them came from members of the community, some of them were extracted from films, which are excluded from the legislation. And we sent 4 copies of a packet through to the Home Office and said, okay, go through the images, tell us which ones are legal, which ones aren't, and that way we'll have a point of reference. That message has still never been replied to, because I think they realised that's so incredibly subjective. If we turn around and say that's an illegal image, they're going to turn around and go, yeah, but that's an extracted scene from the Saw. It's a BDFC certified film. If it's illegal, you should be pulling that off the market as well. So they were hesitant to do it and refused. So the answer is, we'd love to be able to say, this level of bruising is okay and this will get you in trouble, you can't. And again, the law is supposed to be written in this country so that no one is inadvertently criminalised. But if you don't give us clarity on the standards, how do we know that? So again, it's one of the reasons why I believe the system itself is now broken enough that it needs a fair amount of repair. But how we repair it is a mystery to me. I'd love to see most of the laws in the UK written to be consent focused. So that, oh my God, it's a crime to send a dick pic to someone without their permission. And that will come into play in October, but you've actually got to look at it and say, consent is such an important part of society in general that that's what laws should be based on, not stuff that's, where are we now? Christ, we're 160 years ago. It's embarrassing. It really is. But there we go. Right, so legislation. Now, one thing that I will ask you to do, and I hope you'll agree with me on this one, if you are aware of someone who has ended up in an awful situation, be supportive. Okay? Because no fucker else in their life is being supported. I lost friends over this. I lost friends because some of them came out publicly and made really stupid statements that they could no longer walk back from. Okay? Because they were so swept along with the wouldn't be able to search him unless something was seriously going wrong, and they made a statement on FetLife, and quite frankly, if you're prepared to do that kind of shit, if you come and apologise, I'm not going to go and find you years later and go, you know when you wrote that shit in August 2018, do we want to have a conversation about it? Because not my problem. Never going to be my fucking problem. It's theirs. And without them addressing it and dealing with it, it's not going to work. Okay? So it is a very difficult and traumatic time for people, particularly because, oh my God, I don't know if you went looking for the resources in the UK to support people who are falsely accused of crimes.
Oh shit, nothing.
There's a couple that run a website somewhere in South Wales that they have no funding. So after a week, I was able to get hold of them and went, hey, is there anyone? No, sorry, mate. But I luckily answered the phone today, but we don't have any money to call anyone. And I'm like, when I get back on my feet in a couple of years' time, watch. I said, I'll send you a stack of smartphones and other bits and pieces to really get you up to speed, because Jesus Christ, if I wasn't as strong as I was, that 7 days of waiting to speak to another human being who understood, yeah, I'd had some deep dark thoughts that week. Because how do you get out of that shit?
And also as well, because it's kind of your life, it's fundamental, it's you.
Yeah.
You know, and they're questioning you as a person, you know, and if you don't have deep dark feelings, you know, I think, you know, you're not really human at the end of the day, you know, it's about dealing with those feelings and actually having allies which do understand the law a little bit and kind of know sort of where you stand.
Now, you can come out of this, like all experiences, a little bit more empowered. So nowadays, when someone walks up to me and they're a complete cockwobble and they're kicking off, the first thing I say is, can I see your search warrant? And they go, what? I said, because the last muppets that came and played this shit, they had one and they got it wrong now. Fuck off. What? Yeah, no, sorry. And no tolerance for idiots nowadays because of the gorgeous Metropolitan Police specialist slave trafficking team. Okay? It's just the way it is. And in fact, when they turned up on that morning, the first thing they asked them for, well, first thing was, can I get dressed? No. Okay, we're not going to start the day by infringing my human rights, so I'm going to ignore that and get dressed. So I got dressed and get on. I said, now give me a search warrant. They handed me a piece of paper and I read no. I said, the search warrant, not a copy of the search warrant. I actually want the court embossed warrant. Because unless you've got that with you today, you're on very shaky grounds. This is a serious matter, sir. You've got to take it seriously. I am taking it seriously. I just fucking wish you had as well. Okay? So, yes, it can make you a stronger person, but it is going to take you a lot of time to get there. I'm not there today. Okay? It's going to be years. And in my case, I know I've got to finish and get you answers to all my questions. Because now I'm at the stage where, okay, the Met have divorced themselves from their responsibility, but thankfully, they've thrown the 2 US immigration guys under the bus and said the embassy is now prepared to deal with you on this issue. And I will go to town with the answer. And I'm not going to stop until I get all my answers. And ideally, if I can get it to the stage where it hurts them enough that they won't do this easily again, then I will consider it with but it is going to take some time. It really, really is. So, that's the key pieces of legislation that are appropriate and important specifically to kink. Please also understand my situation. We did this workshop in London last month and about 4 people came out of the workshop and went, fuck, that's it, I'm getting out of this kink shit, it's too risky. Okay? My situation was one of certainly the top 5 most extreme cock-ups that the police have done in this country. Okay? Because they really steamed in and went hard on it. Most of the time, they're not quite as heavy as this. They rely on the fact that if they catch you doing kinks, they're going to go, oh, you bad, bad person. I'll tell you what, trap your nerves, all that stuff. They don't realise how dangerous those things are. But they'll go, right, okay, plead guilty, accept the caution, and then it'll go away quickly. Because actually what they're looking for is, I investigated a crime, I closed the crime, well that's a tick for my performance. Okay? They will often put things in place to say, oh, it's only a minor offence. But actually, if you're in a notifiable profession, you're in healthcare, you're in education, Christ, if you're a lollipop lady, okay, you get sacked for being kinky. Or sacked for going to court under any of these pieces of legislation. Because you're bringing your industry into disrepute. Okay? So it's one of those, you may accept the caution, you may still end up losing your job and changing your life as a result. Okay? When it comes to lawyers, okay, it's a lot like a therapist. Get the one who's got as much experience and knowledge of kink as you can.
Is actually natural bliss now kink? Still
Not really. So what happens is you contact the trust, you have a lawyer on the team, and that's the person who you usually end up speaking to. Okay? And obviously, if you can, if you are dragged in and they say that's it, you've got to come down the station for an interview, you want to be speaking to a specialist lawyer before you make that interview arrangement. Okay? Because as crazy as it sounds, they'll be trying to pressurize you. So when they search my home, my vehicle, my lockup storage unit, they then turn around and say, you've got an hour off, we want you at Brixton Police Station for an interview later with your lawyer. And I went, okay, give me my phone back first. I'll ring my lawyer, and when he's available is when we'll have the meeting. And he said, not available till 3 o'clock, David. Yep, there you go, guys. Your 3 o'clock is full, your 1 o'clock isn't going to happen. My lawyer's not available till 3. Okay. You don't have to do it in their time frame. Okay, this is your time. You're the one being accused. Get your rights and get what you need in place.
But of course, as well, side note is be very careful when they say it's a voluntary interview.
Yep.
Because if they say it's a voluntary interview and you don't come within a reasonable time, they will issue a voluntary arrest.
Yes.
And that is something that people don't quite understand. Is when they say it's a voluntary interview, then you.
Couple of days at the most.
Yeah.
Couple of weeks, they're going to come looking for you. Simple as that. Okay.
Do you know why they do voluntary. Because you were not under caution at that point. You were under caution, you were arrested.
Yeah, and also the fact is as well, what they want to try and do is they want to try and get all the evidence first, and they want to try and make sure they bury you first.
Yeah, so you can provide them with things in case you to press charges
Yeah.
instead of the other way around. Yeah, that's it. So you can outright refuse to be interviewed without being arrested first. General rule, I would go that way first.
Yeah.
With previous knowledge, like I said, I would ask to be arrested. Because then you have to at least give me your rights. I know it sounds like a really trivial point, but if they then break those rights, if you do that and you have not been cautioned, I'll listen.
The only problem with that is, and I would say this as somebody which is a former Met police officer, is that you've got to be very careful on that.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they do formally arrest you for any of those crimes,
Yes.
You're guilty.
it's not
Yeah.
so much a guilty, but the thing is, if you're in
That's it.
doing a performance or actually a role, you could actually be notified, and they could actually notify your employer that you've actually been arrested on suspicion of formally arrested. And that's why I always say is never ever go for a formal arresting, always go for the option of going for a voluntary interview, so then you bring an actual legal team with you,
Yeah,
and then it's nothing there at the moment until they charge you.
that's it. The only bit, like I say, though, the only part of the difference between the caution and which you'll know, I know this
Yeah.
is not for your benefit, is that anything you say, which obviously in the regular is a standard, but they can, like you said, they can trick you into saying things
Yeah.
under court, which if you're being arrested, they cannot.
Yeah.
So it's that weird, it depends on how much trouble you
But that's when it's when in the interview, they do say the caution of doing not
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah, it's the same standards, but it's
Yeah.
the difference between entrapment and not is if you get arrested. Or,
I think,
yeah, it's
I think,
very strange, very weird.
I think the key is getting a solicitor which you know you can trust, and which can dig you out of a hole pretty bloody quickly if necessary. And also do a no comment interview, as you said, with a prepared statement. Because then if they start bashing at you, just saying,
No comment, we already did this, you might just
Yeah.
And it's one of those awful things, like everything in life. I don't want this to happen to people, but by being aware of it, having a plan, a strategy, getting your ducks in a row, means that if it does happen, it's not that almighty big crisis, crazy, oh my god, how do I? No, I'm going to my backup plan, and this is how we're going to do it. Okay? When it comes to the questions that they'll ask you, don't necessarily expect anything that is even vaguely understanding kink. I got one, how do you obtain the people you play with? And I'm like, ooh, top marks for the loaded question. Just to clarify before I go any further, no money change hands. So, it's a little bit like you guys, and they're all sitting there looking at each other going, what? I said, well, you know, uniformed services, you hang out together. And the fire brigade and the ambulance tell you it's because uniformed services understand each other. I think the reality is they're just taking one for the team, the rest of society can't fucking stand it, cunts. So, after 3 hours, I've had enough. So I'm making this very personal as they're making it for me. So the reality is, who the fuck's going to hang out with you lot? So you all have to have that excuse. Well, guess what? Kingsters are the red-haired stepchildren of the LGBTQ plus rainbow. Okay? We don't even have a fucking K in the acronym. We're resorting to plus because there are elements within the wider community who don't want us there. So we are persecuted by everyone. So guess what? We have our own social events. And what happens is, we all turn up in a pub, we all know that we're going to be there, and someone usually walks up and goes, fucking hell, I saw that great image you shot and put up on social media. Can I do that to you? Or can you do that to me? And I go, yeah, absolutely. Can I do this, this, and this at the same time? And they go, yeah. And we've established consent, and we're going to go off and do it. No money changes hands. Jesus Christ, do you think I'm buying people to do this shit with? So I said, as much as anything, it's embarrassing how little people go for. And they go, what? I said, it's 500 quid, isn't it, on average? And they're all kind of looking at each other going, yeah, how does he know that number? Oh, the other joyous thing that they were looking for, has anyone been around in Kinky for more than about 10 years? Has anyone heard of a website called the Slave Registry? Okay. So, item 4 on the search warrant was the Slave Registry.
What, the actual certificate or the documentation to go with it?
No,
Not the sound.
they assumed it was a big leather-bound book. So I'm sitting in there going, you know, this slave registry you're looking for, did anyone bother to look at .co.uk? Because that's where it's hosted. And they're like, I said, no, seriously, you came into my life looking for a fucking book that's a website. You don't understand this at all, do you? No, thank you. But there we go. So, that is my briefing to lead on SM and the law. Please, everyone, be good to each other. Be sensible. Try and avoid the cockwombles that will throw things like this at you. Okay? Because it's just not worth it. Okay? Do your due diligence, meet decent people, build those trust-based relationships, and then you are less likely to end up getting a rude awakening at 6:30 in the morning by the next finest. The other thing I would suggest to you, if you have anything in your house that is extremely naughty, they might think, oh my God, someone is into kidnapping people, must have, you know, a bottle containing a clear liquid that you put on a rag and go like that above people's faces. Hide it behind the biggest dildo in the house. Because that's what I did. It lives there behind the big dildo. They didn't bother to find it because no one was prepared to pick up the fucking. Oh no! Seriously, big dildo. No one was prepared to touch it or move it, and therefore a 5-litre medical bottle that was behind it was completely obscured, and no one bothered to uncover it.
That's how people hide big dildos.
They did find the large bottle of ether that's in my freezer, but thankfully, because of my other job, I'm not allowed to have it because it's classified as a work tool. But they were adamant that, well, we're going to have this, and I'm like, okay. Who's got the best health and safety qualifications today? So someone came in, I'm a forensic examiner, I probably can do quite better than you can. Okay? Turn the bottle over. The hazard label says it's explosive. I said, now, you've had it out of the -20 for about 4 minutes. Do you mind putting it back in before the vapor pressure builds up and someone blows my fucking flat up?
I don't like to phone on start.
No, it's the best one. Oh, well, we're going to take it. Okay. Put it back into the freezer first, and then I'd like to know where you're going to take it. And then I'll have a chat with a custody sergeant and I'll explain to them how to store this properly and all of the appropriate controls. But I'm willing to bet you don't have a police station in the country that has the storage that's necessary to store this. So either got to go to a medical facility or it's got to go to the military. Not going to a police station. Unless they're consoles. So yeah. Be sensible, be good. If you do run into a problem, for God's sake, give us a shout. Okay? There aren't many people who can relate and empathise to how shitty this stuff is, and that's why we're always prepared to chat. Okay? And the shocking thing is, you'd think, oh, it says that because it's only once or twice a year, or once or twice a decade. No, about once a month. Okay? And some of the things that I have to deal with are deeply fucking unpleasant. They're absolutely abhorrent, and you don't even want to talk about it. But actually, if you're stuck in that crossfire in that situation, you need someone who is capable of saying, yeah, okay, let's talk about this. Okay? Let's not judge you for what you've been caught up in. Let's actually find a way of moving this forward. Okay? Because some of the things, yeah, they're crimes for a damn good reason. Okay? Occasionally you have to deal with things where I go, yeah, I don't think they could have consented to that. They have too many legs. But actually, people need to have those kind of conversations. Okay? You've done something really fucking stupid. Are you going to do this again? No. Okay. Then we can help you move forward. Okay. Where if you go, those fucking cunts, how dare they come in and steal my naughty porn collection? Yeah, no. We probably can't help you because you're not looking at it and understanding that you will on one side or the right side. Any final questions? No. I sincerely, as I said, hope that none of you get the knock on the door. Okay, but if you do, please help. Okay, and that's the key message. And likewise, talk to people when you meet at events and stuff. Hey, what's your understanding of SM and the law? You'll be surprised at how lucky it is because most people, I don't do anything that's illegal.
Yeah.
Why for you transient, everyone? Just remember this. Okay?
Have you ever spoken to anyone modifiers? They don't be known for GBH because they cut some nipples on their face.
Right. The extreme body mod lots are always in a very dangerous position, particularly since they've started to charge some genital piercings as female genital mutilation. So it's obviously to intimidate, but the problem is a lot of them say, oh no, we're a tribal art form, we can't be carved with a paintbrush. So they try and keep the two things separate, when in fact we've got to say, actually, as a wider community, we have got the tattoo artists, the body model, we've got the furries, the kinksters, anyone who is transitioning or cross-dressing if they feel that they need a community to integrate and accept it. We need the rubberists, we need, to some extent, the naturists. We probably need to have a bridge with the swingers. I don't think we're necessarily going to get them fully integrated. It could be a wide bridge. Absolutely!
They're not coming in.
We're checking their lateral flow tests at the door. But yeah, it's one of those. We need to look at this as a much wider community so that we're stepping up and helping everyone as opposed to trying to build this. Because when Criminal Justice and Immigration Act came through, there's a very well-known organisation that, you know what, they're all against people not ending up in jail for the wrong reasons. They're all about human rights. They're just the most awesome individuals for their organisation. And when we wrote to them and asked them for support, they said, fuck off. Now, they can rattle on most city streets in this country. They have not had a penny from me ever since. And most of their can rattlers get told why they don't get a penny from me, because I say, I work on some extreme situations and cases and lobbying, and your organisation said you wouldn't be associated with us. No, oops. Sorry, you're not holding your own barriers right now. But there we go. But I won't name and shame them. Still oddly popular and they do some interesting things in other countries. They're just not very structured in this country. There we go. And likewise, if you've got any questions, you want to bend my ear about something afterwards, please feel free to grab me. And apart from that, have an awesome time. Oh, one final thing while I remember, we're doing a big fundraiser and raffle today with Alden and Siren Hall tattoos. And that's to get a laser machine to help people with body dysphoria so they can have laser hair removal and stuff like that. Please go and have a look. If you want a spanking bench, the first prize is one of our spanking benches we're giving away, so it's worth it. Let me just turn this off. And there we go.